and welcome to this tutorial to accompany week 2 of my picnic on the beach blanket crochet along. I'm Eleonora, the designer behind Coastal Crochet, and all the details about this blanket can be found over on my website www.coastalcrochet.com. So this tutorial covers the wave rows, and these waves are created by altering the height of the stitches as we crochet along to create that sort of wave bumpy effect, but there's also added texture created by when we change the colours crocheting into the back loops only, and by crocheting into the back loops only on the colour change rows we really get this gorgeous added texture. So they're quite simple rows once you get the hang of it, but I have done this tutorial to help for those that just need that extra guidance. So I will show you how to get started. So week 2 starts with 2 rounds of ordinary treble, that's US double crochet stitches going all around the central square. So you end up with your one big central square, which will be the middle of our blankets. We're now ready to move on to our side panels. So if you look at the pattern, it tells us to make sure that the right side of the blanket is facing you and the square is held sideways. And the way I do that is by looking at your central gingham squares. I like the little vertical bars to be vertical. So when you're looking at your blanket, make sure that the vertical bars are facing upright, and then that you know that this is the side edge. So sort of turn it on its side like so, and now you're ready to crochet along one of the side edges. So when you have the side edge ready to crochet along, simply join yarn D to the right corner chain space. And so that's looking at the blanket. Here's your side edge that we're going to be crocheting along, and it's the outer right corner chain space, which is here. Insert your hook and join with yarn D. And then make 3 chain, 1, 2, 3, and this 3 chain counts as the first treble US double crochet stitch of this row. And so row 1 is a simple row of ordinary treble US double crochet stitches going across to the next corner chain space. So simply work 1 treble US double crochet in each stitch across this side edge. So I'm just coming up to the end of the side. 2 more stitches to do. 1, there's the last stitch of the side here. And then in the corner chain space, we simply do 1 treble, 1 US double crochet into that corner chain space. And so that's row 1, very simple, and you should have 74 stitches going across this entire side edge. And now we turn the work because we're going to be working in rows. So turn the work so the wrong side is now facing and ready to move on to row 2. So having turned the work, and now we're ready to crochet row 2, have the wrong side of the blanket facing and make 1 chain. Now this time, this little 1 chain doesn't count as the first stitch. So the very first stitch to crochet into is this one here. If we make a, say 3 chain, say we were working treble US double crochet stitches, and that chain counted as the first stitch, then this first stitch here would be accounted for, and so the next stitch to crochet into, the first stitch of the row, would be this one here, the second one in. But because this 1 chain does not count as a stitch, we have to crochet into the very first stitch of the row. And if you look at the pattern, it's now 1 double crochet, that's a US single crochet, in each of the next 4 stitches. So there's the first stitch, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what we're doing now is we are creating our waves, and the waves are created simply by varying the heights of the stitches that we're crocheting. So here we've done our 4 double crochet, that's US single crochet stitches, the shorter stitches, but now we want to increase the height so that we create the wave effect. So it's now 1 half treble, that's a US half double crochet in the next stitch, and now it's 1 treble US double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. So that will create the top of our wave. And now we're going to be going down again in size of stitches, so it's 1 half treble, US half double crochet in the next stitch, and then it's 1 double crochet, US single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And then if we have a look what we've done, you can see we now have that little wave effect. So we've got the shorter stitches, then the taller stitches, then the shorter stitches again. So if you look at the pattern, it now tells us to repeat from star 6 times. So the star is now where we have the half treble, US half double crochet stitch, and so we do one of those into the next stitch, and then we're back onto our taller stitches, 1 treble, US double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. So repeat from star 6 times in total, and that will bring us to the end of the row, and I'll show you what to do when we get there. So I'm just coming up to the end of the row and the final repeat, and we end with the 1 double crochet, US single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And then remember that the 3 chain at the start of row 1, that counted as our first stitch. So there's that 3 chain, and so the last stitch to crochet into on this row is the top of that 3 chain going under 2 strands. And there's the final stitch. And so if you look at the pattern, it now tells us to join with yarn F at the end of the final stitch. So that's the stage where we are now, the final yarn over hook. And when you're changing colour, you do that at the last stage of the stitch, like so. Now don't fasten off yarn D, because we can bring this up the side ready to join later when we're doing another set of waves in this colour. So don't fasten that off. And now we turn the work, ready to go on to row 3. So row 3, you have the right side of the blanket facing you, and we begin by making 3 chain, and this counts as the first stitch of the row. And so what we're going to be doing in this row is working into the back loops only of each of the stitches, and that's what will create the sort of textured wave effect. So it's now 1 treble US double crochet in each of the next 3 stitches in the back loop only. So here's our 3 chain, counts as the first stitch. So the first stitch to crochet into on this row is the next one in, this one here, but we're only going to be working into the back loop only. So when you look at your stitches, each stitch is topped with a V. You've got your 2 strands, and you're only going into the back one. So if we have a look at this stitch here, you've got 1, 2 strands. It's the back loop only of that stitch that you're inserting your hook into, like so. Back loop only, leaving that loop to the front, and just work a treble US double crochet stitch as normal. So that's 1, that's 2, and this is 3. Just working into the back loops only. And by doing that, you get a little ridge, which adds to the texture of these waves. And so now it's 1 half treble US half double crochet in the back loop only of the next stitch, and then it's 1 double crochet US single crochet in the back loop only of the next 4 stitches. It's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4. And so you can now see we're doing the shorter stitches on top of where the taller stitches were in row 2, and we're doing the taller stitches on top of where the shorter stitches were in row 2. And by doing that, you're getting the opposite wave effect, which will really, create the wave pattern as we go further. So looking at the pattern now, it's 1 half treble US half double crochet in the back loop only of the next stitch. And now we're on to our taller stitches, 1 treble, US double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and there's 4. And there we go. You can really see the sort of ridge that we're creating by just going into the back loops, and also by alternating the height of the stitches, we're really getting that wave effect. And so now it's repeat from star 6 times. So go back to where the star is, you've got your half treble, US half double crochet, and just continue from there 6 times more. So I'm just coming up to the end, just got my final 4 treble US double crochet stitches to do. It's 1, 2, 3, and then there's the final stitch. That was the first double crochet, US single crochet of row 2. And there we go. So looking back, we have this lovely textured wave created by just working into the back loops only, and that's going to be accentuated even more, the wave effect, as we move on to the next row, row 4. So turn your work. So I've turned the work, ready to move on to row 4, and the wrong side of the blanket is now facing us. And row 4 is simply a repeat of row 3, but we're going to be crocheting into the stitches as normal and not into the back loops. And that's because we don't want to create the ridged effect now. We're working in the same colour, but what we do want to do is to accentuate the wave shape. So we're going to be doing the same stitches on top of the same stitches from row 3. So repeat row 3, but crochet into the stitches as normal. So go to row 3 where the written pattern is, make 3 chain, that counts as the first treble US double crochet stitch off the side, and because that counts as a stitch, the first stitch to crochet into is the next one in, this one here, because the very first stitch is accounted for by the 3 chain. And so now it's 1 treble in each of the next 3 stitches. We're not working into the back loops, so just go into the stitch as normal. That's a US double crochet, so 1, 2 and 3, and now it's 1 half treble, US half double crochet into the next stitch, just going into the stitch as normal, we're not working into the back loops, and then 1 double crochet, US single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and then repeat exactly what we did in row 3 in this row here, but just working the stitches as normal. And carry on to the end. So I'm just coming up to the final 4 stitches, which is the treble US double crochet stitches, and then the very final stitch to crochet into is the top of the 3 chain, which we started our previous row with. There we go, going onto the 2 strands. And now we join with yarn G at the end of the final stitch. So this is the final stage of our last stitch. And we now join with yarn G. And just like before, we don't cut yarn F, leave that attached because we're going to be rejoining that later. But now we're going to carry on with yarn G and we turn the work. And so here we are, the beginning of row 5, and now the right side of the work is facing us. And in this row, we're going to be working into the back loops again, because just like here, we want to create that ridged effect between the different coloured waves. So we look at the pattern, we begin by making 1 chain, that doesn't count as a stitch, and we are now going to be doing 1 double crochet US single crochet into the back loop only of each of the next 4 stitches. So the first stitch we need to crochet into is our very first one, because the chain doesn't count as a stitch, and just go into the very back loop only of that stitch and work your double crochet, US single crochet, and we're doing one of those in each of the next 4 stitches. So that's 2, that's 3, and that's 4, working into just the back loops only. And now we're going to be doing the opposite of the previous row, so we're going to be doing our taller stitches on top of the shorter stitches and our shorter stitches on top of the taller stitches to get these wave shapes. And so now it's 1 half treble, US half double crochet into the back loop only of the next stitch, and then it's 1 treble, US double crochet into the back loop only of each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And just like before, by working into the back loops, you get that lovely ridged, textured effect. And so looking at the pattern, we're now on our half treble, US half double crochet into the back loop of the next stitch, and now we have the shorter double crochet, US single crochet stitches, 4 of those. And you can really see the wave effect taking shape now. And so now it's repeat from star 6 times until we get to the end of the side. So I'm just coming to the end of the row, working the final set of 4 double crochet, US single crochet stitches. That's 2, that's 3, and the final stitch to crochet into is the top of that 3 chain, but we're going to work under both strands as normal. We're not just going to crochet into the back strand of that 3 chain, because otherwise the side of our row will be a bit too gappy. So work a double crochet, US single crochet stitch into the top of that 3 chain as normal. And that's the end of row 5. So we turn the work, ready to move on to row 6. So for row 6, make sure you have the wrong side of the blanket facing you, and row 6 is simply a repeat of row 5, but we're just working into the stitches as normal and not going into the back loops only. So have a look at row 5. We begin by making 1 chain, that doesn't count as a stitch, and now it's 1 double crochet, US single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. We're not going into the back loops, we're going into the stitches as normal. Here's the very first stitch to crochet into, because our 1 chain doesn't count as a stitch. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now it's 1 half treble, US half double crochet, and now it's 1 treble US double crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. So we're doing exactly what we did in row 5 here on row 6, but just working into the stitches as normal, not going into the back loops. And continue to the end of the side. So I'm just coming up to the end of row 6. I'm on the last 4 double crochet, US single crochet stitches, and if you look at row 6, it tells us at the end to rejoin with yarn D at the end of the final stitch. So here's the last stitch. Now I'm at the last stage of that final stitch, and remember at the end of row 2 we didn't fasten off yarn D, and that's because we want to rejoin it now and trail it up the side of the work. We will be crocheting around this side edge later on this week in this blanket, so don't worry about having the yarn trailing up the side. We don't want to pull it too tight because then you're squeezing the side of the rows together, but equally we don't want it too loose, so just trail it up the side and then join it back into the work by ending this final stitch by rejoining and pulling through yarn D like so. And so now we turn the work, ready to go on to row 7. And so now the rest of our wave rows, the rest of the rows in week 2 are a repeat of rows 3, 4, 5 and 6. That's your green wave and the beige coloured wave here. So that's the yarn F and yarn G. So we're just repeating those rows, but obviously in different colours to create the lovely coloured effect waves. So looking at the pattern, rows 7 to 8, which we're going to do in the blue yarn D now, are simply a repeat of rows 3 and 4, and then rows 9 and 10 will be a repeat of rows 5 and 6, but we'll be using yarn F. So just continue doing exactly what we've done, but just in the different colours. So row 7 is a repeat of row 3. We begin by making the 3 chain, and then it's the 1 treble US double crochet into the back loop only of the stitches. And so it's just a repeat of row 3. So continue through the pattern, repeating rows 3, 4, 5 and 6 as indicated, and by doing that you will get the lovely wave textured effect. And each time as well, just remember not to fasten off the yarns, because we will be rejoining them as we go. You can see here I've trailed yarn D up the side, and it's just really neatly joined it back in. So continue repeating rows 3, 4, 5 and 6 in the different colours until you get to the end. And so here you can now see I'm at the end of the wave rows in week 2 on my picnic on the beach blanket. So you can see this was row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Row 15 was simply a repeat of row 3 using yarn F. And then row 16 was just a row of ordinary double crochet US single crochet stitches. And then rows 17 and 18 were simply a row of treble US double crochet stitches. So at the end of row 18, make sure you've got 74 stitches going across. Each of these rows was worked with 74 stitches. And as you can see, we have got that lovely textured wave effect by crocheting into the back loops only on the colour changes. We really get that lovely textured wave effect. So they were pretty simple rows once you get the hang of the varying heights of the stitches and obviously working into those back loops. So I hope you found the tutorial helpful. Thanks for watching.